Before we jump in, let me introduce our two voices for today's conversation, because this debate works best when it's grounded in real-world responsibility and real-world incentives. First, Gina LeBlanc, CEO of Lock Trust. Gina spends her days thinking about how financial systems actually operate at scale. Regulation, risk, compliance, and what it takes to move money safely in the real world. Her perspective comes from building infrastructure that has to work every day, not just in theory, and that makes her naturally focused on stability, accountability, and trust.
Hi, everyone.
Joining her is Jean-Marc, a fintech infrastructure investment expert. Jean-Marc looks at money from the plumbing up, where systems break, where they ossify, and where new rails quietly replace old ones. His lens is market-driven and global, where capital flows when it loses trust in institutions, and what happens when code starts doing the job people used to do.
Hello, everyone.
So today we have two perspectives that are often framed as opposites, but in reality, they're deeply interdependent. One optimizes for coordination and accountability. The other optimizes for exit and autonomy. My job is to make sure neither side gets a free pass. Let's begin. Let's ground ourselves. When we say crypto and CBDCs, we're not talking about vibes. We're talking about architectures. Gina, one sentence. What is a CBDC really optimizing for?
CBDCs optimize for trust at scale, efficiency, compliance, and stability without reinventing the entire monetary system.
One sentence. What is crypto optimizing for?
Crypto optimizes for removing discretion, no gatekeepers, no special access, just rules applied equally.
CBDCs didn't appear in a vacuum. Governments didn't wake up one day and say, let's centralize everything. Why are central banks seriously pursuing this now?
Because the current system is slow, fragmented, and expensive. CBDCs are a response to inefficiency and to private digital currencies challenging sovereign money.
So CBDCs are defensive as much as innovative. This isn't theoretical anymore. When you look at China, Europe, the US, what stands out?
The technology matters less than governance. China shows scale and control. Europe shows hesitation. The US shows political distrust of centralized power.
So CBDCs are mirrors of political culture, not just payment rails. Crypto didn't start as an efficiency play. It started as a reaction. A reaction to what?
Repeated institutional failure, financial crises, censorship, currency debasement. Crypto is an opt-out button.
Do institutions underestimate that motivation?
Often, yes, but opting out doesn't remove risk, it just relocates it.
Let's move beyond price charts. Which crypto use case actually matters?
Stablecoins, global dollar access without banks.
Could CBDC allow that same openness?
Technically, yes. Politically, that's where constraints appear.
So the limitation isn't code, it's policy. This is where debates usually break down into absolutes. But money systems live on a spectrum, from cash to crypto to banks to CBDCs. Is the real risk choosing one end exclusively?
Yes.
Yes.
Programmability is either a feature or a threat. Should money ever be programmable by the state?
In narrow, transparent cases, yes, fraud prevention, targeted aid, and crisis response.
What is the red line?
Behavioral control. Once money enforces morality, trust collapses.
Every system has a freeze button. The question is who controls it. Why is crypto's version different?
Because freezing requires private keys or contract rules, not political discretion.
And when keys are lost?
Then freedom cuts both ways.
Let's be precise. Crypto isn't anonymous. CBDCs aren't automatically Orwellian. Is privacy a right or a policy choice in CBDCs?
A policy choice, but one that must be protected institutionally.
And that's the problem. Rights that depend on policy can be revoked.
So the core issue is revocability of privacy. Both sides claim inclusion. Who gets excluded in a CBDC world?
Those failures would be governance failures, not technical ones.
Who gets excluded in crypto?
Those without education or tools.
So inclusion isn't automatic in either system. There's no clean victory here. Biggest CBDC risk?
Mission creep.
Biggest crypto risk?
Irreversibility without safeguards.
Shared risk?
Loss of trust.
Picture your daily life in 2035. Which future is more stable?
A hybrid. CBDCs as base money, crypto at the edges.
Which is more just?
Any system with exit options.
So justice may require instability, and stability may require control. This debate isn't left versus right. It's coordination versus autonomy, safety versus exit. Which do you trust more and why? Quick gut check. Who should control money's rules? The state, code, markets, individuals, a mix. Money is a social contract disguised as technology. Gina chose accountability. Jean-Marc chose exit. That tension isn't a flaw, it's the point. Now we'll open the floor for questions. Please type them in the chat.
Jean-Marc, earlier you said something sharp. Crypto-native rails create open competition. Moats come from network effects, not regulation. Let's bring this directly to capital allocation. If you're underwriting infrastructure today, 10-year horizon, real capital at risk, which environment creates more durable control layers? A CBDC dominant financial infrastructure or crypto-native rails? Jean-Marc, you first.
I'd say crypto-native rails create open competition. Moats come from network effects, not regulation. In traditional finance, defensibility often comes from regulatory barriers, licenses, charters, clearing access, capital requirements. In crypto-native systems, the base layer is open. Anyone can build, anyone can integrate. So the moat shifts from permission to participation. You win because you have the deepest liquidity, the largest developer ecosystem, the most integrations, the strongest token incentives, the widest global distribution. Those network effects compound, and once liquidity clusters, it's very hard to dislodge.
So you're arguing that defensibility is earned through adoption velocity and ecosystem gravity, not policy protection.
Exactly. In crypto, incumbents are attacked constantly. The control layer has to be continuously reinforced through usage. That makes it volatile, but also potentially more anti-fragile.
Gina, what's the counter argument? Why might CBDC dominant infrastructure produce stronger moats?
CBDC environments absolutely compress margins at the transaction layer. Basic payment processing becomes commoditized. But that compression pushes value up the stack. In CBDC dominant world, the durable control layers aren't in moving money. They're in compliance orchestration, identity verification, risk scoring, fraud analysis, cybersecurity, regulatory reporting, infrastructure. When policy is embedded directly into money, complexity increases, and complexity creates infrastructure demand.
So transaction rails commoditized, but compliance becomes strategic?
Yes, when money becomes programmable, every transaction carries policy implications. That increases the need for secure identity, auditability. The governance controls, those layers are not easy to replicate, and they align with regulatory durability like old-fashioned banks.
But that's still policy-dependent defensibility. If your strategic leverage points depend on regulatory alignment, your risk profile includes political turnover. Crypto-native moats depend on adoption, not election cycles.
And crypto-native control layers depend on liquidity concentration, which can reverse quickly. We've seen ecosystems collapse when incentives disappear or exploits occur.
Let's distill this for investors. Crypto-native rails, open competition, winner takes most dynamics, network effective driven moats, high volatility, high upside. CBDC dominant infrastructure, margin compression at base layer, value shifts to compliance and identity layers, regulatory aligned defensibility, and lower volatility political exposure. So we're underwriting two different types of durability. If you're allocating institutional capital, pension, endowment, long duration fund, which profile better matches long-term risk tolerance?
Institutions underestimate how quickly network moats compound globally.
Institutions underestimate how durable regulatory alignment can be.
But that's still policy-dependent defensibility. If your business premise depends on regulatory alignment, your risk profile includes political turnover. Crypto-native moats depend on adoption, not election cycles. So we are underwriting protocol dominance or regulatory embeddedness. Where does systematic risk concentrate more? In a centralized CBDC system or a decentralized crypto ecosystem?
Centralized systems are easier to monitor and stabilize, but yes, they create a single point of risk. Only when crypto is licensed and regulated will it also be at less risk.
Crypto distributes technical risk, but introduces coordination risk.
So one concentrates failure politically, the other operationally. If a major geopolitical event occurs, which system holds up better?
Systems with exit options historically survive longer.
In crisis, coordination matters more than ideology.
So resilience depends on whether the threat is internal or external. If CBDCs remove intermediaries, who gets disintermediated first?
Payment processors with little differentiation.
And ironically, some banks.
So infrastructure investors should be looking below the application layer. Does privacy become a premium product or a CBDC world?
Yes, privacy markets expand when default visibility expands.
And institutions will pay for compliant privacy, not absolute anonymity.
So privacy shifts from default to feature. Do crypto rails win primarily through regulatory arbitrage?
Initially, yes. Long term, they win if they provide real efficiency.
Sustainable infrastructure aligns with regulation eventually.
So arbitrage is entry, not durability. Is a hybrid future stable or inheritably unstable? Gina?
Hybrid creates layered risk, but also layered resilience.
Competition between rails prevents complacency.
So monocultures are the real systematic threat. Gina, in CBDC heavy world, do valuation multiples compress across fintech?
Yes, at the transaction layer.
But they expand at the infrastructure and the identity layer.
So value migrates, it doesn't disappear. Are investors underpricing political risk in digital currency adoption?
Yes, especially in democracies with election cycles.
And Gina?
And of overpricing technical disruption. And yes, to expand on John Marks, we've just seen that with Bitcoin. It's fallen to less than half of what it was due to political cycles.
So the risk premium may be misallocation. If you had to underwrite one assumption for the next decade, what would it be?
Governments will never surrender monetary control.
But capital will always seek optionality.
And investors live in the tension between those two forces. We're going to close this lightning round with one sentence answers, no hedging, no speeches. Investors in the room, listen for assumptions you agree with and ones you don't. More durable monetary architecture over the next 20 years, CBDCs or crypto? Gina first.
CBDC, because governments don't relinquish monetary control and it's safer for the public.
Crypto, because systems with exit options outlive monopolies.
Which compresses fintech margins faster?
CBDCs.
CBDCs at the transaction layer, but they expand infrastructure layers.
Where is political risk underpriced today?
In crypto adoption assumptions.
In CBDC rollout assumptions.
Global financial shock. Who holds up better?
The system with parallel rails.
The system with coordinated authority.
Which preserves capital mobility?
Crypto.
Crypto, by design.
Where is surveillance risk structurally higher?
CBDCs.
CBDCs if governance fails.
Which is more likely to be widely adopted in 10 years?
CBDCs, obviously.
A hybrid.
If you had to pick one dominant investment theme, A, sovereign digital infrastructure, or B, decentralized financial rails? Gina?
Do I only get one? If I do, it would be sovereign infrastructure. But I also think it needs to be working with the rails that are decentralized.
And I would say decentralized rails with some oversight.
Most underrated risk in the entire debate?
Monoculture.
That sounds like something that needs an antibiotic. Loss of public trust, in my opinion.
One word for the future of money. One word, no explanation.
Accountability.
Optionality.
And there it is, accountability versus optionality. If you're an investor, your job isn't to pick just one side, it's to price that tension correctly. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
everyone.